So I have Roger to thank for so many things, but one of them is that he nagged me about doing this journal for at least 3 years before I thought about it, but he was very persistent. But he is the founder of Pluto Journals, and I'm so delighted to introduce you and thank you for doing this, Roger. He's a visionary radical publisher, first with Z Books, then with Pluto Books, and he was the founder of Pluto Journals. And Roger, this is an important audience because people listen and are activists in their own right. And we have Mike King to thank for having listened to what we need and actually putting his elbow to the task sometime after our previous meeting. But I want to just introduce Pluto Journals because the Journal of Fair Trade is part of a family of journals. Next. And Pluto Journals is like this David and Goliath thing, which I'm sure Roger will speak more about. Small, independent, London-based, but with editors, authors, readers from around the world. And you've seen our snapshot, and we're tiny. Journal of Fair Trade is tiny compared to some of the other journals. Some of them are very, very well established. I'll show you their names in a second. And it's radical, scholarly, and the subject matter is really cutting edge social sciences. Pluto Journals is the first social science publisher to make the full transition from subscription system, you know, where you sold a subscription to a library, to open access. And I'm not going to go more about that because today is the day we thought it would be really important to delve into what are the thrills and the challenges of open access. And nobody can do that better than Roger. Next, I don't know if I'm able to do it. Yes, this is the list of journals. All of them you can find on Pluto Journals, and the links that you can see here on the Pluto Journals website will take you straight into each of these journals. And the subject matter, next, Ellie, Arabic and Islamic studies. We've got a little cluster of those. I'm not going to go into it. If you're interested in this, you can go find them, but their visuals are nice. Global and international studies, state crime, political economy, global fault lines. Next. Studies about the global south, north-south, decolonial issues, groundings, fair trade, diversity, social justice, welfare, the gig economy, disability, intersectionality. We've discussed intersectionality on this in this group before. And next, legal, labor, and employment studies. Really, just incredibly interesting range of subjects. Okay. And I won't say more about Pluto Journals because that's Roger's job. Next. So Roger, over to you.
Pauline, thank you very much.
We can take the slide off, I think, so that everyone can see. You could stop sharing for a moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can see you much nicer. Welcome, Roger.
Okay, Pauline, thank you very much, and for that very nice introduction. What I want to do this afternoon, it's my afternoon, I'm not sure it's everybody else's. I want to talk about the broader system in which the Journal of Fair Trade exists. And in particular, I want to talk about the funding system of scholarly journals by libraries worldwide. And first, let me apologize to any of the audience who know about this system. On the whole, I find that very few people actually have a good grasp of it because it is a complex arcane system where demand and supply don't work together at all. And it's very well illustrated by the figures you've just seen. A huge increase of the fair trade usage developed when we went open from 70 to 12,000 in a year. And that's just quite extraordinary. But I apologize particularly to Mike King, who I know is in the audience and who did some work for us. And that sometime I'd like to talk to Mike. But I suspect he knows more about this than I do. So let me continue on that basis. Now, very briefly, every major university library has government funds which are used annually to support scholarship. And many of the major libraries have 7-figure funds, which very few people actually know exist. And scholarship generally could not exist without these fundings. And we developed the subscription system solely for journals, or primarily for journals and books, before we moved into digitalization. What I like to call must-have journals in medicine and other disciplines always charge the highest rates. And out of these must-have journals developed the major publishers in this field. There's 5 or 6 of them, and I'll name them. There's John Wiley, Taylor and Francis, the Springer Nature, Elsevier, and there's Routledge, which is owned by Informa. And of course, there are OUP and CUP, which are major library publishers. And then there's a huge tail behind that of very tiny publishers, all trying to get access to libraries every year to get some of the funds which are available. And these major publishers have always taken about 80% of library funds over a long period of time. And when digitalization came in about just over the turn of this century, the big publishers agreed with the libraries to develop the digital system for them. And with the result that the big publishers were able to take an ever-increasing volume of the funds available, and the smaller publishers got less and less. And I saw that over the second, from 2010 or so, 2012 to 2020, our income diminished year on year, and I could see this happening. And what happened was that, as I say, the big publishers organized the digital systems for the libraries, and the libraries began to get quite upset about this. So what happened was that users started complaining, and we get the beginning of the movement to open access. And open access essentially provides free readership at one end of the spectrum. And that's very important. As that developed, and a whole movement across the global world, particularly in the West, developed for free access. And at the same time, publishers needed to be paid. And so they developed something called APCs, Article Processing Charges. And these were imposed on the authors And the authors, on the whole, obtain these APCs from the funders of the research. And the social sciences and the humanities, who were authors who were writing, were on the whole not obtaining funds for research for the article they were publishing. And so they were rather left behind in the open movement. Over time, everybody complained about this because these were public funds which were being used, which were being swallowed up by these very small number of publishers. And what we then get is the movement into diamond open access. And that is also a new movement which allows the author not to have to pay fees. So diamond open access. And when we moved into this sphere, and I was always very frightened of it because I thought it could ruin the company, and we were forced into it because our host was JSTOR, and JSTOR decided to move away from small journal to host small journals. And what happened was that gradually the preferred system of governments and people providing funds became the diamond process. And I'll just read you a document which was produced recently, and it's quite short. And it says, what is more, a growing chorus of stakeholders, including the Ivy Plus librarians. The Ivy Plus librarians, for those who don't know, are 10, 14 major universities in the United States. The Ivy plus the Ivy librarians in the US, a coalition of UK-based researchers and the Council of the European Union are calling for an alternative collective funding model for open access. At the same time, a collective funding experiment, as well as conditional open models, such as subscribe to open, which neither authors nor readers pay. This is reported as promising results around the globe. And Pluto Journals is in the middle of this. We are members of the Subscribe to Open community, and we are part of the development of funding, which is troubling the library community as a whole. And the question that librarians are asking is, how do we pay for these journals, because we don't have appropriate open budgets? And these are difficult questions which we are facing. Well, what happened to Pluto Journals was that in the first year we went open, our growth of usage, our downloads, increased by 650% across all our journals. Our younger journals increased by 1,000%. That is quite an extraordinary change. And at the same time, our income halved. And so for the last 12 months, I have been speaking to librarians and consortia of librarians to try and improve this situation. And a very interesting time that was. I've been in publishing for 35 years, and during those 35 years, I had never spoken to a librarian. And so it's a very interesting period for myself. Now, what we're doing, we're gradually increasing the number of libraries who are supporting us. And what we need is more librarians, more libraries. So I'm approaching libraries, but I don't know who to approach. So people in this audience who have access to libraries could try and meet their librarians and ask to meet the social science librarian and ask if they would support the journal to which they are attached. Now, librarians like to meet members of their community because they want to support them. So if you can do that, and then let me know, and my email is is attached somewhere, which Pauline will tell you about, and let me know, then I will approach the librarian and give them more information, because we are aiming to create a partnership with libraries. What we want to do is to move out of the idea that libraries are subscribing to us, because libraries get access to all our journals anyway. But we want to create partnerships with them and then provide an annual report to every library. So the more you can help us, the better for this whole process. Anyway, thank you very much. Yeah.
So Roger, thank you so much. I'm sure you'll hear from people. I think the only thing I wanted to add that you didn't mention, and I was hoping you would, was that you have discovered that a lot of libraries have a little window in December where they have a bit of budget left, even if they don't have an open access
Well, I
budget
can.
line.
Shall I develop that slightly?
Yes, do, because I mean we're in November,
Yes,
right?
yes. Well,
so you know, the iron is hot, or might be hot for another year. Okay.
Very few libraries, as far as I can make out, have specific budgets for open access, particularly for Dharma access. But what happens is that some of these budgets are underspent. And by December, they're thinking of what can they spend the underspent money on. So the money that's left over is then spent in the last 3 weeks of December. And I'm told, and I haven't got it, I'm told on people who do know these things, that 25% of the total budget of libraries is spent in the last 3 weeks of December. So not till the end of the year do you find out whether you have been, whether you're on their list or not.
Thank you, Roger. That's perfect. All the more reason if people think they can walk in a door in the next few weeks, they should be in touch. So thank you so much. I thank you so much, Roger. I know you're super busy and we'll let you go unless you want to stay for as long as you can and listen.
Okay.